Or we're back, I guess. I'll be on the play, I guess, this one. This is a mulligan, I feel. Because we're not casting. Well. Yeah, I think this is a mull. Yeah, this is worse. No, I didn't. We're 2 matches in. It's possible I should have kept that first hand. Unfortunately, we're down to 5 now. Keep. Sort of. We're only playing 4 matches today. I think we keep this. We're only doing 4 matches. That way, we can keep, the number of play draws the same. Um, sure. I think now we're not allowed to do anything. The force there is probably fine. And we'll just pass. Hey, Mike, how's it going? I think we're probably gonna be down a game here. We mode a 5 this game here. They mode a 6 for what it's worth, and they did force a turn 1 play. We have not no. This is a dedicated Delver stream. Playing against Delver. We are 2-0 right now. With each person on the play once so far. When is the Tony Money match stream? He's gonna have to when he hits top 10 in the MTG Goldfish. I think that's the only stipulation I have, right? As long as you're a top 10, popular deck on Goldfish. I'm ready to lose to Tony if he wants, but or I can money match Tony too, but he'll probably have to give me better odds, right? Like maybe okay. So his win rate against me is probably like I don't know something like 8-1, 9-1. So if he gives me those odds, okay, sure. I think at most, and this is like stretching. I think my win rate against Tony is probably like at best 15 to 20%, and that's like at best. I think it's actually lower than that, but the only thing we have going for us this game is there's no pressure yet. Oh. This is the price we pay for our mana base, and maybe we only should run one basic force because we have so much reliance on black now. Like basic force is pretty bad. Like, and I think there's an argument to be made with how. Well, it depends. I have to like test it some more. There's an argument made we should only have one basic force. Why would I fetch for Arbor there? That doesn't make any sense. Like I have 2 black cards in my hand. Right? I don't understand the logic behind that. The question is, what are they waste here. But yeah, I think we keep that first hand if one of the basics was a fetch, but and I think there's argument made. Maybe we should only play one basic, as crazy as that sounds. We need a like green sun or dork here off the top. That's not great. The only thing reason why we're even in this game is perhaps it is because we've dealt with their threat, right? But yeah, I would love to hear what people think. Like, is the second forest just not necessary anymore? They are, but it's a problem when you have so many black cards. But again, against some of these, but the problem is maybe they don't go after our mana as much out of these control decks because we have the second basic. There's that too. Uh, Not the end of the world. We draw another land and we can potentially deal with that Murktide Regent. I don't think so. I don't. I also don't like Swamp. Like it doesn't really cast a lot of things. Like maybe it's okay. I have the feeling it's not. Also, the lair of the Hydra already like be another green sword helps. Our mana is actually the best it's ever been for what it's worth. Like 16 IMS is just unprecedented. Like literally. Go to 10. I think that's reasonable. We need to draw lands. That is a start. Actually, hold on. I think it's that. And I think we take the Bayou here. We're like close to natural order map too. So there is that. Go to 6. That's not. They have full grip. That's the only issue. Yeah, we're doing just straight up Delver matchups. All right, go to 6. It's probably fine. I think they probably have some combination of bounce or removal plus force. Like there's a lot we just can't even play around here. There's like 6 cards in hand. If they have removal, we're probably dead. Hmm. Actually, that's a mistake. We're dead to a sneeze the following turn. Well, not quite, but probably dead to a sneeze. We do that now. We lose to a lot, but I mean they have it. They have it, right? Yeah. All right. That's probably game. Yeah. I think we mold that first hand. It's like if we couldn't keep that second hand, so we went a five. Debate it makes me question whether we really want whether we really want two fours or not. It was like kind of bad. All right, we're just dead. That's a good point. Gotta win two on the draw. Well, one on the play, one on the draw. Possible, but I think game three may be tough. I think this is fine. That's good. How stock is the Delver list? Adam posted it online. It's pretty stock in my opinion. Like, there's two fears out of the sideboard, but that's like it, I guess. It, so to speak. I think we just kill that. So we're just like on the let's get to 3/4 reclaimer plan here. Is a fury here? That's something we live with. Like a card that could see play too. Like that's bad right now is Pyroclasm, but it's like kind of bad because Initiative is popular. Yeah, 3/4 gold. So HD Fox, actually, you'll be happy to hear. We're on like double Hydra, right? Like this is a Hydra tribal now. Like Progenitus main, Lair the Hydra main. Where is it? Yes, Hell Hydra. I know, right? Like just this is the most Hydras we've ever had in terms of like main deck. Unprecedented. Unprecedented. They have a bolt here, then it's not great for us. If they don't have it, then we probably bog. Okay. Cut one Hydra and two more will grow back in its place. I don't think I want to run out the Shepherd here. I don't think it makes sense to. I think we just bog. The greedy line here is to like not bog and have them tap. The greedy line would have been what is it called? Not yeah, not bogging, going for the shepherd strike. But I don't think we need to like put ourselves in danger for no reason. That gets blown out by That gets blown out by well, they get stopped for one by like wasteland. But maybe that's okay. I don't know. Actually, I should. Okay, that was a mistake. I was gonna say I should have played the shepherd. I didn't want to expose the shepherd, and maybe we just live to lose to Fury there. Didn't feel like it was worth it though. Yeah, I think that was a misplay by me. I probably on that board state play the shepherd, play the what's it call it? I think there's a Murktide regent coming here. It's gonna be a 6/6 Murktide regent, but I think that's probably fine. Oh, okay. I probably misplayed a little bit this game, but it may or may not matter. Like I said, I think it was correct to probably play the shepherd before the. Oops. See what makes. Ooh, okay. Yeah, the misplay might have been the. So the Murktide cannot attack now. Oh wow, okay. Play lobby. Oops. Yeah, that one was on me, I think. But nevertheless, might have been able to win if I played correctly. So no. It's 2-1 in our favor. I think attack only with Reclaimer, no Dino mode. Uh, that's fair, AC Fox. Keep. I'm not playing the best, but that's okay. Yeah, you're actually right, AC Fox. I think we win if that's the case. We still would have to win a game three on the draw, and that's probably difficult for its worth. But you're right. I probably got a little bit greedy there. Our hand is not great, but they have looks like a Murktide reactive hand as well. Sure. Um, the question here is: do we endurance or do we gris? I think we don't play scared and we just gris here. I think we'll pass. Uh, Argument to be made whether we snuff out the Dover or not. Let's see what they reveal on upkeep. Sure, I guess there's no need. Sticking that first endurance is huge. And then we just play defense, I think. There's no need. Definitely, drawing two natural is kind of bummer, but I think we're slamming it next turn regardless. I got to knock on wood. Something does not happen to me. I think for those of you who have watched me long enough, you know what could happen. think we want land off the top. That's like reasonable too. Hydra. Yeah, that's the card I was afraid of. Right, rule of thumb, you're gonna play the one that doesn't cost you the dork. Um, is a wombo comp. That's true. It is. Might be a Murktide region coming. Never mind. So they slam Murktide here. It's like we're probably gonna slam the natural order into days, but I don't think we can play around that. Hmm. We should win the race if we play carefully here. Snuff own endurance, you know you want to. We should win the race, but they have a 3 power creature on as well. Oh, so they want to get the iteration back, right? By bouncing the Mystic Sanctuary. Sure. We know what's on top now. I think that's fine. There's full information, so picked up the Vendetta and then the Graveyard here, right? I know, right? The 1-2 combo. All right, this is pretty good. I like it. You got mana, you got interaction. We're gonna like snuff out the turn one dork, so to speak. Do we want the endurance or do we want the reclaimer? I think we probably want the endurance. Oops, cancel, cancel, cancel. And the logic is, we already have mana. Like we have Cradle. I don't think we need to like. Sure. So let's do this. Are we back on Hydra full time or is this a test? We're back on Hydra full time. You're talking about Lair of the Hydra, right, Dustin? Also, it's dangerous to fetch Arbor in this matchup. I don't think we want to block. And the logic and the reasoning for that is because you get really blown out by sweepers and they can attack your mana base. I don't think we do it now with that wasteland there. So 2, 3. We'll just pass. It's telegraphed that we have endurance, and they know about it from the Once Upon a Time. Sure. So a force there would allow them to potentially Murktide. I think the other thing is like our general line of play is typically we want to endurance into I think now we do it right. We're gonna play a Cradle. So we're gonna Grist tick up. Yeah, that's gotta be forced. The question here is, do we trade with the Delver of Secrets? I feel like probably. What do they pitch? Murktide Regent, sure. Makes sense. I don't love force of negation for what it's worth. Like not hitting endurance I think is a big deal, right? Like that's why this endurance resolved. I think they might be better off with the counterbalance into the sideboard. It helps turn on the Illyrian too. But we can pick their brain after this. Ugh. Maybe they kill the endurance here and like chip away at our life. So we're at 10. That's not great. But we do have a lot of top decks. Not that though. Go to 7. I'm gonna take really danger zone. They don't have a DRC because if they did, this wouldn't be played first. Yikes, that is a killer. Go to 4. Probably at a virtual 1 here. I'm assuming there's a ball in hand. Oh my god. Alright, I think we're just dead. I don't think we beat that. The problem is, we go to 4. We have to. Yeah, we're dead. That's not. Yeah, we're dead. We can hopefully win one here on the play. Take the land. Fetch. I think here we actually take the basic. And then we probably we don't have a payoff. So there's an argument. Yeah, I think we play the reclaimer here. They could waste us here, but I don't think I want to be shut off like black entirely. So I guess we just take that. Oh, that's actually a really good draw. We have Goyev Tribal now. Iteration? Yeah. So that iteration is kind of like the I'm in trouble iteration, right? Like you're staring down 2 Goyas that's like kind of a fast clock. So the art, I think we artisan here. Arguments to be made. Actually, okay, that might have been not good. I think maybe we're supposed to play the Finhorn and untap for Cradle. Well, our closeout speed is pretty fast. Yeah, in hindsight, I don't love that play. I should have played the fin horn, and then and then hold one reclaimer up for cradle, and then green sun the following turn. Yeah, I'm gonna get punished here. I think we just do that now, right? Since that resolved. Yeah, Windetta is for sure correct. The aggro plan got there, but I actually don't think I played correctly. Like I would do it over if I could. The good thing is the Fury is only a 2 for 1 here, right? And we have lethal, like through one removal. Yeah. All right. So 3-1. We didn't play the best, but I think that kind of showcases that the deck is, pretty good in this matchup. I think I'm gonna go ahead and ask Adam if he'd like to come on, but we'll see. All right. Let me. One second. Okay, I have the settings set up.
How's it going?
Hey Adam, how's it going? Good games, man.
Yeah, uh, I definitely was playing the beginning pretty bad,
Uh huh.
and I just like wasn't fighting over the correct axes, and
Uh
I
huh.
like definitely did later, and I think you can kind of see that probably. Um,
I did. I think it does happen. Like I know, even though we're playing for money match, it does happen, especially since this is still for fun at the end of the day. And I totally understand the kind of getting warmed up aspect. I guess the first thing I want to ask you is, I mean, before we dive into like, and how much time? I don't know how much time you have. Let me know if you need to get to bed or anything too, because
no, I my bedtime's like 1 a.m. my time or like 2 a.m. my time, so like I'm completely fine.
Before we even start discussing, I don't know if you're in my Twitch chat now at the moment or not, but I'll go ahead and what's it called? I'll link your what is it called? I'll link your profile here so anybody can follow you if they want. Copy link to profile. Here's Adam's link for everybody who are curious. I have not met Adam, but I've had only good positive interaction with you. And then actually, while I do that, let me bring up your list. Here we go. So a quick recap. I think the final score was it was I think 2-0, might have been 2-1. And correct me if I'm wrong on any of this. I think 0-2 you won the third one for sure, and then this last one was 2-1. Is that correct?
And we can check pretty easily on Moto. Let me
It's
make
something
sure.
along those lines. I may be wrong.
Yeah, it was 0-2-1-2-2-0-1-2.
Okay, so that it sounds like I got it right. Flip the order,
Yeah,
obviously.
yeah, yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
so I think the first thing I want to ask is when we first discussed doing this, you had talked about potentially playing the snuff out list. Is there a reason why you favor the blue red version? With no splash a little bit more. I'm assuming because of the mana base.
Yeah. I played a few matches, and the deck is like really awkward. Like you have to fetch Underground Sea, and then Underground Sea is basically basic island. And if you ever draw like basic island and Underground Sea, it's just horrendous. And so I kind of like don't even want the basic in that deck, but then you play the mirror, and every once in a while you want it.
Mm-hmm.
The list is kind of messy. I also haven't been playing Infinite Legacy and kind of just defer to whatever other people have been doing
Uh huh. Makes
lately.
sense.
And so it is mostly Kenta's list. I changed a little bit of the sideboard, I think, just based on how I would actually register an event. But
Makes sense.
yeah,
So I guess since we're on that topic, I guess I'll just say from my side too. I totally understand the it's a little bit awkward to have underground sea because that's almost like a second basic island, right? So in the third match that we played, where I was on the play, I mowed a five, and the reasoning it was because that opening seven, maybe I'm supposed to keep, but it was four lands, a black, one black card. I think it was like Grist or something, and then Reclaimer and something else. But I had two fours in my opening hand, which is like really awkward, because of the higher increase in black cards now. And I was just chatting it over with, mentioning on Twitch that maybe we're supposed to just go down to one basic force because it was really awkward to have to mulligan that seven, if that makes sense.
yeah, yeah. I would have also like mulliganed differently if you had been on 7 versus you going to 5. Like I just snap kept the wasteland when you're on 5 because like never mulliganing wasteland bolt force was like my 6, I think.
No, no, for sure, for sure. I actually mentioned that
Yeah.
too. Where at like to chat where I think I went turn because I drew snuff out in the opening hand, right? I just say so I had to.
Yeah.
So the thing is like fetching basic is almost just as bad because you just turn off your deck. You know what I mean? And then
Yeah.
so I fetched basic, and then you force. I was like, "There's probably a wasteland coming here," and lo and behold, you wasteland me. So it was kind of like I wouldn't say predictable, but it makes sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I was going to force basically anything you did that game.
Right, right. No, that,
Um
that totally makes sense because I was on a
yeah,
mode of five already.
right, exactly.
I guess I'll ask a little bit, like from my perspective. I guess I'll ask a little bit about your sideboarding that I noticed. I noticed you kept in force of negation, which I don't think is like great personally against me because like, I don't. Also, I'm not sure how familiar you are with like how I board compared to other people, but I typically board out natural orders. I don't know. I'm assuming you know that, but like,
Yeah, I was aware that that was something you might do, but on the off chance you board it in, it's like kind of bad. Also, days had just kind of sucked against you, so I wasn't huge on days. Um, and then the other cards I was cutting for the Furies were Pyroblast and one Mishra's Bauble. And then
okay.
the days the days force was mostly a play draw thing.
Oh, gotcha.
I
That was what I
want
was
to
gonna
have
ask.
Yeah, as well. I want to have Fawn on the draw. I experimented a little bit with Fawn on the play over the daisies because they were like a little bit awkward. But I think that Fawn on the draw is pretty reasonable.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, that was one of the things that like struck my attention or whatever. I think the other thing is no counterbalance. At least I didn't see it. Like
No, I didn't burn counterbalance. It felt like if I got to a point where counterbalance would be good, where I could like say go on 2 mana,
mm-hmm.
I was already probably in a pretty good spot.
That's
Also,
fair.
like the card is really awkward into Alistair Shepherd, and you have a lot of threes and fours. And like my deck is not good at countering threes and fours. It's possible you're supposed to, but it felt like a really awkward angle of attack, and like the board was not clear that often.
That actually makes a lot of sense. And I had not thought about that. Or I guess indirectly I had because every time I played against is a Delver and they bring counterbalance, I'm like trying to hit three or four, right? With like, the snuff outs, the endurance, or like Green Sun for three or four, right? Like it's like really awkward because I know more often than not you're not gonna be able to do it with Brazen Borrower, you know what I mean?
Yeah, um, yeah, it like briefly crossed my mind, but I think I stand by not boarding it in
It makes
against.
sense. No,
Yeah.
I guess I indirectly had thought about it before, but like hearing from your perspective, like it's just so awkward if your opponent is, holding all three drops or four drops in the hand, right? Or like pseudo four drops, I guess, right?
Yeah, it's something I'm like willing to do against blue decks with similar, but that's because blue decks cannot pressure you, so you can just afford to tap out on turn 2, and if it like gets a 2-for-1, that's like you're fine with that, and you're just like you're not going to die if your opponent has an insane turn 2. Whereas in this matchup, you definitely can.
Mm-hmm.
You
I
also like need to be able to set it up so it's kind of a 3 drop, and like it's kind of just ugly.
No, no, I that totally makes sense. The only consideration I had also for it is like maybe you get to flip it off a DRC for Delirium, but maybe that's more just like uh icing on the cake than anything else, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you're bidding counterbalance with DRC, that's not a place you want to be.
Right. That's fair. One other thing that I've seen tried against me that I thought, I don't. Obviously, what expected to come in was like the Fury. I thought you might bring in counterbalance, but your logic, at least for force negation, makes sense. And I know the play draw days thing is like a thing. So when you were on the play, I'm assuming you kept the fawn out, right?
Yeah, most of the times.
Okay.
Occasionally I would board it in just to like in the later ones, I might have had it in on the play. Just because days had just felt really bad,
Mm-hmm.
even on the play. But most of the time I had fun, it was on the draw.
Right.
And then I boarded in the 2 drop early, but I stopped doing that
Say that
later.
again. Which two drop?
Hearse.
Okay, I was just gonna
It
ask you if you
yeah.
felt like I've had people try that against me, and it's don't get me wrong, it can be annoying. The
Yeah.
problem is you're almost like down a card, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that was my like I realized that partially through, and I never got into a position where I actually ever saw it in the games I had it.
Uh huh.
The problem with the list I was playing is you actually can't deal with 4 toughness creatures like basically at all.
Mm-hmm.
Um and it's kind of an issue. I think I would probably register an Unholy Heat over the second Brazen Borrower.
Yeah.
Um
Or submerge,
but
right?
like yeah, I was contemplating like putting a submerge, but I was like, yeah, there's not really much green white depths, and like I didn't want to play a deck that was like just for elves, like that
Right.
just felt not in spirit. Um, but I did notice, like I was like, oh my god, like I can't actually ever kill Elvish Reclaimer except with Fury, which is like not great.
Yeah. Like unless you're gonna win like in 2 or 3 turns, it's not something
Yeah.
you really want to do. And I noticed that too when you showed me this list. I was like, oh, there's no unholy heat, so it's almost like the X fours are gonna go the distance, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. Um, it's really rough. Also, like Reclaimer being able to shut off my Murktides,
Mm-hmm.
or at least like temporarily set them back, is kind of an issue
Right.
with Bog. But
Something
yeah,
I
this list
did.
certainly
Go ahead.
respects Reclaimer a lot less than decks I would play if green white decks were playable.
Sorry, I didn't catch that. Say that again.
Like the list is a lot different if like green white depths is playable and you have to respect Elvish Reclaimer.
Ah,
But
gotcha.
that's not really the meta we're living in.
No, that yeah, that makes sense. Also, like my version, I think it's kind of I know people like uh, they have their different opinions on my list, but I think everybody can agree it's less popular overall. So like it's like perfectly reasonable to just think, oh, hopefully we'll dodge the 1 or 2 artisan lists or whatever too, right? Like most
Yeah,
of the people
yeah.
are on the traditional, glimpse of nature, heritage druid, nettle sentinel build. So it's like a reasonable call from a like you don't expect to always run into me or like the other 2 pilots or whatever on the list, right?
Yeah, I'm not gonna like construct a list just for like a couple decks because then you're going to be doing it for like breakfast and like all of this other nonsense when there's just like 2 decks that will be 80% of your matches.
No, that's like completely fair. So you mentioned you boarded out one Bobble. I personally think Bobble is really strong, from my perspective, because it turns on DRC like really early, and 1 turn potentially faster for a Murktide region. Um, do you think that was a mistake, or do you still stand by that decision?
No, I like it's just one of the cards that's really easy to cut. It's just like it gives you poor mulligan info. It is like kind of free, but it is just the card that comes out first a lot of the time out of Murktide or
Got
out of Delver. And
gotcha.
like it also is like it's really awkward on the draw because you really want the blue cards for Force of Will and it like if it's the next card down, it's just kind of a mess. So I do tend to board out either one or both in most of my matches.
Gotcha. Okay, that's interesting. I wouldn't have guessed boarding out both. One I can see only because the second one's kind of bad. I agree with that. Because the first one's mostly just a delirium, right? Like, it's,
Yeah,
and especially
it
like
can do fun things with Delvers.
right.
It didn't ever come up.
Yeah.
It
Also
almost came up
against.
in one of yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
No, it almost came up in one of my turns, but like it didn't quite like I knew it was there from a ponder, but it wasn't ever going to be a relevant thing I pulled off.
That makes sense. Yeah, the target yourself on my upkeep, right? Like to flip a Delver, like two chances like
Right.
that. Like that makes sense. I think chat. I guess I'll ask chat. Like, did anybody have any questions specifically for Adam with regards to this list? And if you, I know you said you haven't played Legacy in a while. And I
Yeah,
know this is a
I've been forced to play Modern and Pioneer, so I've been starting to get back into Legacy, but I have not played in a few months. So
Speaking of which,
yeah,
I know one of the reasons why. So for those who don't know, Adam here qualified for the NRG championships, and the two formats were, excuse me, Pioneer and Modern. So that's why Adam was on that. But so I wanted to just extend my congratulations to you first for qualifying there. If nobody else had any questions for Adam with regards to this list, I guess the final question I would ask before we move to my list is, if you could, would you change anything? Obviously not for the elf meta, but for general meta.
I might swap the one Unholy Heat for one of the two Brazen Borrowers, but I think overall the I like how the list was constructed.
Including the sideboard, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah, Cyber's fine. I think.
Okay, so I'll close this real quick, and then I'll bring up my list. I guess yeah, I'm just using Twitter. I guess from your perspective, I think you probably had an idea how I board it, which is just like I just took out Collector Ooze is just the worst card in the deck, right? And then I boarded out the natural order package, which you may have suspected, only
Yeah.
because I mentioned to chat. From my logic, I feel like it's probably not necessary and kind of a liability. Like I don't really want to cast a 4-drop in the presence of Wasteland Days, right?
Yeah, I remember you saying something about boarding out natural orders on Twitter like 5 months ago.
Uh huh.
Um, and I have like a really good memory for weird things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I kind of suspected that that might be a thing that you would do, and
Mm-hmm.
then board in like Vendetta Endurance, and potentially even Plague Engineer.
Yeah, I
Um,
think the last card that comes in is the guy's blessing for me. I didn't board in engineer, but I know some people would like it. I found it to be very high variance personally, but some people had like great success with just engineering a whole human board, right? So
yeah, yeah, either it's really bad or it 3 for 1s me and I die,
right,
and
it's
there's
like no
not a
middle
lot of
ground.
in between. Yeah.
So I've seen it both ways, but I personally like the guy's blessing because it's green first of all, and it's a 2-drop. But I guess we'll talk about the main deck a little bit first. Like which card, I guess, before and after we play right now. Thank you for the subscription on Bad Mental Misstep. Uh, which card main deck like scares you the most, or at least you found the most effective against you?
So I think like just Grist was the card I was like normally worried about. Like I was like, can this hand beat him having Grist? And most of the time the answer was no. Occasionally I could like deal with it on turn two, but
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the time I was like, well, if he has Grist here, I just lose. Um, and then as we get later in the game, like it starts shifting over towards Elvish Reclaimer,
Mm-hmm.
as a like Elvish Reclaimer or Fiend Artisan, more Fiend Artisan, I think, um, because I can't effectively remove it, and like it's just really big.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I have to just like get the Murktide in and start crashing.
Yeah, that makes sense because like at least from my perspective, granted I haven't played Delver in a minute, right? Like I haven't essentially touched. Well, actually that's not true. I guess when I did this before against Jarvis, I played it for Delver from the other side, right? We took turns, but
Sure.
outside of that, like I haven't played Delver outside of paper in quite a while, right? And I usually play online now just because things to do and whatnot. I don't have as much time. Yeah, so your experience from the other side actually lines up with my impression, which is that Fiend Artisan is kind of like the win condition in the sense that like when it grows to like a 5-up, it's just near impossible to deal with, and it's kind of like why I don't think natural order is really necessary, like post board, right?
That definitely makes a lot of sense. It also is like not always easy to stick like creature plus 5 mana against Delver a lot of the time. 'Cause you really want the 5th mana. Um,
Oh, to play around days. Yeah, that makes sense.
yeah, yeah.
And
So like untapping with creature 5 mana and the natural order is like kind of a tall ask when I'm kind of just trying to attrition you out
right,
of the
right, for
game.
sure. That makes sense. That actually reminds me of something from your list. I'll bring it up real quickly again. Speaking of attrition, my gut feeling, and feel free to interject or whatnot, is I personally find my experiences now. Before it would be different, right? Like before, I felt like iteration and Murtai were just absurd. But ever since I added Fiend Artisan, I almost feel like these two are a little bit not bad per se, but a little bit of a liability potentially in some boards because it's 2 mana and you can't really allow me to untap with Artisan. Do you think that's accurate or no?
So I actually think that iteration is a lot better against your deck than the traditional elf deck.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you were on the glimpse deck, I think I would probably trim an iteration and probably cut the Mystic Sanctuary. Um, but I think like you have to both have a way to end the game because like you will eventually draw the Fiend Artisan with Murktide, and you also like I, I also just kind of need to have the force for Fiend Artisan, um, which iteration really helps recoup the card advantage for.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think I actually really like iteration against your deck a lot better than traditional elves.
Gotcha. What about Murktide region?
I mean, it is awkward into Snuff Out. Like, if I get Snuff Out, it's not great,
Right.
but you have to be able to win the game. And, like, it does attack through endurance, which is the key selling point of that card.
Makes sense. Okay,
It,
that
like, it is how I won the large majority of my games, I think. It's just,
yes. After I've like after we both exhausted our resources, because I think more
yeah,
often than not, I'm like forced to snuff out whatever turn one threat you play.
right. Agree.
Let's go back to
Unless you have the endurance.
even then, like the damage may
Yeah.
be done, right? Just too much. Like let's just say you flip Delver. I'm like taking 3, 6, potentially 9.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, that the first match we played, I drew just like unbelievably poorly. But other than that, like it was fine. I just like drew. I think I kept like a little bit of land heavy hand, and then just like iterated into 2 lands, and I was like, all right, well, this game is not not playing this much longer.
yeah, that makes sense, and that's just part of Magic too. Like in general, like
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
think.
I don't get tilted. I just thought it was funny. I was like, well,
How'd you feel about the snuff outs? From your perspective?
they felt very good. I mean, or like they seemed really good.
Yeah, I
It
was.
does like
Go ahead.
if I draw the wastelands, it makes them like a real liability. Like if I have a wasteland heavy draw and
Yes.
you have like
And if I have a land like
it's
draw,
really
right?
rough. Right.
It's also why I play a higher land count because I think in this list it's one of the elegant things I guess is flooding is not as much of an issue because you have artisan, you have green sun, like they're kind of like mana sinks, and even like the layer of the hydra, which is like I played it a long time ago and then I recently added back because I just like was fed up with Caracas, right, just not producing green.
Yeah.
um yeah, so that makes sense.
We did also have that one game where your higher land count was important. Like I needed you to brick on a land for probably about one more turn than you bricked on a land.
Which game
And
was this?
that I think it was in match 2, and it was either match 1 or match 2 of game 2.
Okay.
And like I like wastelanded you and bolted and petty thefted your creature and was like, well, I need you to not have another like not draw a land ever. And I left you with like no board, and like if you draw you drew lands, and then I had
Oh,
like three
I
lands
do
and no
remember
cards
that
in
game.
hand.
I do remember.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
the I think it's the one you petty theft the reclaimer, right?
Yep. Yep.
Oh,
I petty thefted, bolted, and wasteland you, and it's like, well, I really need you to not draw a land ever.
I got a little bit lucky. I top decked the green sun, which is almost as good as drawing a land, right? It's just as good,
Well,
I
it was
guess.
kind of awkward because I knew you had both of. I knew you were going to draw green suns, but I also knew that you had both of your Dryad Arbors in your graveyard, and so
Uh,
it didn't. It was a 2 drop.
Oh, I think you're right. I think you're right. I might be
Yeah,
misremembering the game, but I think you're right. Yeah, I think
yeah.
I never drew the guy's blessing against you that I boarded in, but it's essentially a fifth
No.
endurance. Like that's how I see it. A
Does
really
it
bad fifth
cycles
endurance.
when you cast it,
It
right?
does cycle.
It
I
draws a
wouldn't
card.
board it in
Yeah,
otherwise. And
yeah, yeah.
in a pinch, I can like put a bog back in, right? But like I'm probably not doing that in most cases.
Yeah. I have never seen that card outside of Vintage where it reads shuffle your graveyard into your library. Like that is my interaction with Guy's Blessing is milling it with Oath.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense, and you can probably
Mhm.
guess why I'm playing it.
Yeah, yeah.
It's for the mill deck, right? It's for Painter, and comes in like
Yeah.
in some other matchups too.
Yeah. I mean, it's reasonable.
Did you have any questions for me personally, or like any? I guess you can feel free to critique if you think some cards are not as good as I probably think they are, or if you think some cards like really overperformed. I think obviously the question I get asked a lot is like, oh, how does Artisan compare to Glimpse, right? And I got that asked in chat earlier, but my thought is Glimpse may have a slightly higher ceiling, but I don't think by much. But the Artisan, in my opinion, has a way higher floor.
How have you tested at all the glimpse versus initiative matchup at all? I feel like that might be winnable, but I'm not 100%.
You're talking about out of this build or out of the traditional build?
Out of the tradition, well, I think that this build is significantly worse against initiative, but I didn't know if like the traditional builds were like capable of beating it or were just also in a similar boat as this build.
I think that's a two-part answer. So I think there. Okay, so the first part is I think I would agree that this build is worse against initiative than the other one, but that's with an asterisk though. That's if two things happen. One, if your opponent is not playing Archon of Emeria, which the other version cannot beat at all. It's like scoop phase almost. The second part is it also depends if so one, yeah, they're not playing Archon of Emeria, and two, I personally think, and I know people keep in Chalice against that version. I personally don't think. I think Chalice personally is a trap in that matchup, and I think a lot of their wins are because Chalice is kept in, and that kind of like derails the opponent. If that makes sense, right?
Mm.
But yeah, I personally think, especially with the Archon of Merit being popular now, I do not think the Glimpse version is like good into initiative, as Joff in a way mentioned here in chat. But again, I haven't actually played it, but I played a lot of Glimpse of Nature in the past, as recently as earlier this year. Granted, not with Nettle Sentinel, but the Reclaimer Glimpse version. Well, when I say this year, I forgot it's 2023. Really, I mean the first half of 2022, right? Like up into July, actually even August.
Hmm.
But my gut feeling is, and based on my reps with the deck and both versions of the deck, is I do not believe it is favored against initiative, especially because most of the lists are on for Archon of Emeria now as well. And even if you don't play Archon of Emeria, I think it has a hard time beating that list if the person knows to board out Chalice of the Void, which I don't think is good in the matchup.
That definitely makes sense. It seems like it is not possible to beat either Allosaur Shepherd or Green Suns for one if your entire alliance is just on, Chalice carrying you.
Right. So
And also
speaking
shuts off your own plows.
exactly. So speaking of which,
Mm-hmm.
I played against John Ryan XJ Cloud. I want to
Mm-hmm.
say a week or two ago. I don't remember the exact date. It might have been 2 weeks ago. Actually, yeah, I think it was 2 weeks ago. And I kept track too because I was curious about this because I've been told repeatedly, oh, it has a good initiative match, the Glimpse version, and I kept track of my hand. If Fiend Artisan were a Glimpse of Nature, how would it do? And it would have been even worse because you don't add to the board. The problem is, I think Chalice of the Void people keep in, but it is a bad top deck. It doesn't actually impact the board and is easily sidestepped by Allosaur Shepherd. So I kind of think the DJ Khaled meme where you played yourself. I think that kind of happens with
Yeah.
some initiative players before. I don't know how true that is now though. What do you think?
I don't know. I haven't been super in tune with Legacy. I know there have been like a lot of variations on initiative.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think like it, it does the Stompy thing in a better way than Stompy decks have done in the past, but it's plays in a similar fashion where like you mulligan to the hands that have good cards that you can play fast
Mm-hmm.
and hope that they're good enough.
No, that
However,
makes sense. Like
yeah,
especially I found like the red splash version to be kind of difficult for me to beat because I think a lot of my cards do not line up particularly well against Caves of the
Caves of
Chaos
Chaos
Adventure. Yeah,
Adventure. Yeah,
like that in particular, I don't think our deck lines up real well against it because of the trample, right? Um,
yeah.
but one thing I did want to mention though is I don't know if you were familiar with Testacular, the username Curran, but he actually went 3-0 with a very similar list, and I guess against Initiative it maps the same way, so the differences in the cyber don't really matter. But he went essentially 3-0 in the most recent challenge. He went 5-2 overall, but 3-0 against White Initiative. So I actually think the latest changes after I got stomped by John Ryan, namely the Vendetta change and the Lair of the
Hmm.
Hydra edition, have helped. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. I still think this deck seems a lot slower than I think the initiative deck is like trying to put pressure
Mm-hmm.
on you. Like I think you trying to assemble a board by turn three and then like try to kill on turn four. And I think that initiative really does a good job at stumbling that
I think
a lot of the
so.
time.
I think so too. I would say like, especially after I got a beat down from XJ Cloud, John Ryan Hamlet like 2 weeks ago. It's hard for me to call it better than even at best, and probably I would have to because of the results call it slightly
Yeah.
unfavored, right?
Yeah, that would make sense.
Um, I think the one caveat though is like Jax. I don't know if you're familiar with that username. He watched the match and he did mention any game with snuff out just felt like a completely different game too. So there is some variance there.
Yeah. That is also the reason to register snuff out in Delver.
Yes, they cannot attack
Is
your mana.
yeah. That
I guess yeah. Did you have any questions or anything you want to ask me or anything you want to promote here on chat? I think
uh
go ahead.
I I'll stream a challenge once or twice a month on a Sunday. Um, but if you follow my Twitter at Adam Wasmo, I
Okay,
tweet a lot. I
so
have a lot of some various tips and tricks, a lot of trolling, all sorts of stuff.
so I'll let me bring up your Twitch real quick and then I'll post it.
Uh,
It's the one with Adam Wasmo one, right? Is that correct?
yeah, I had to make a new account when I got a new phone and computer, and then like couldn't recover the old one, so then I made Adam Wasmo one.
Okay, so one question I did have from Joff in a way is I do think or a comment Nelson is sneaky strong against initiative. If Joff in a way would want to elaborate on that, I would love to hear the opinions. But my personal take is I don't think personally that that build is great against initiative, despite what some people believe, especially after the change to Archon of Emeria too, right? But I
Yeah,
would love to
that
hear
card
that.
seems not beatable for a mono green deck.
Yeah. So my experience from just watching and just like my own play patterns with like I try to keep in mind like what if an artisan were a glimpse or whatever, right?
Mhm.
And my experience is if your opponent knows what's up, like I think a lot of the elf wins, not just against initiative but in general, are because people don't know how to play against the deck. And I cannot say if you actually take the time to actually learn the choke points of that. I think it's especially the glimpse version. I think it's like
I
very.
have I have a lot of experience playing against traditional elves,
Mhm.
and but I have very rarely played against this version, which is like part of why I was struggling the first few games. Is just like figuring out where I need to attack this deck, and it's very different than the points that you need to attack traditional elves.
Yes, I would agree with that. I would say the traditional build probably scoops to Archon of Merit and probably scoops to Plague Engineer, which is conveniently my sideboard. I would say this
Yeah.
version is little bit more soft to like Opposition Agent and like the can't search effects, um,
Mhm.
which is I think less of a weakness. But you know, from an outside perspective, I guess you can comment on that if you want.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like it would be very hard to beat the even mind sensors that I know some people are playing,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't know like how how real that is currently.
I think
And like,
if they catch you off guard, with so to speak, with shields down, you don't have snuff out or vendetta, then yeah, even
yeah,
mind sensor is probably very difficult to beat. Sometimes you get lucky. I know Curran Testacular, actually with the active mind sensor, he natural ordered and still hit because he had a dead or virtually dead artisan anyways. He still hit the progenitor, so that's more lucky than anything else in the most recent
sure,
challenge. But I do think that is one advantage of having the 6 instant speed removal spells, right?
yeah, yeah. Sunflower is certainly very good against a deck that needs you to have an answer in the first 2 turns, where you still have to be applying pressure to them.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I know the one match. I get asked about this question, this land a lot. At the one match, this came up a little bit, and then I think you ended up winning the game. How annoying was the lair there? I'm assuming it was enough.
I was not really worried about it. I like all my creatures are flying, and so that card does not have sneaky reach.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
Makes sense.
so yeah,
So
I was like, yeah, I need to find a Murktide eventually before I get killed by a 2/2 land. But
that makes sense. So I guess from your perspective, you're just thinking, well, it's annoying if you know that land goes the distance. Like it doesn't. It potentially can do a lot of damage because of the cradle, but you're gonna have to essentially race whatever else threat I potentially have. So I guess for your thing, it doesn't change your gameplay too much, right?
yeah, it did not affect my thinking, and it was not even on the top. I don't know. Like it was not in the top 3 lands I wanted to wasteland even
Makes sense.
against your deck. So like I would rather wasteland like Bayou or Dryad Arbor or Cradle.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. Makes sense. Yeah, especially before when I was only on two Bayou, like especially if my opponent didn't know, they could just like easily cut me off black, and I've had to adjust my mana base for the third Bayou because I just don't want to risk like you know suddenly my removal is cut off if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I think you said Gris is probably the scariest card that you mentioned, but is that mostly because you think uh, it's the board states that you can't actually deal um, with Gris? Because my fear a lot of times is like if I play Gris tick up, if you have like a flyer, you can potentially get it down to one, right? Like especially if you have a flip delver DRC. I'm assuming
Yeah,
it's when you're behind, right?
yeah. If I'm behind, or even like if you're on the play and like are able to like if I play a 1 drop and like don't have the days, if you just slam grist and then kill my threat, I just like have no way of killing your grist, and then just kind of stone in the waters.
That makes sense.
Uh,
That makes sense. I had one game where I could have slammed Grist and played Endurance instead, and I kind of regretted not doing that. So that does make sense, especially with the second one now. Like, there's less fear of just like losing my Grist and then suddenly like that line is just off the table. If that makes sense.
yeah, I've also played like a good amount of modern and like am very familiar with the play patterns of grist,
Mm-hmm.
and have lost a non-zero amount of games to grist. So
I'm assuming this is out of
just
Yawgmoth, right?
yeah, Yogg mostly.
Okay. Um, I would say from your perspective, I guess like I know that the threats that get talked a lot about, like are Reclaimer, Endurance, Artisan, and Gris. How would you rank those in terms of like what you're most afraid of? And like, does Alshore Shepherd even crack the list there?
Shep. It really depends on the texture of my hand,
Mm-hmm.
right? So like there was one part in in some game in match 3 where my hand was like 2 forces and 2 dazes, and I just like couldn't kill your shepherd, and was like, well, this is very awkward.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would much rather kill the shepherd at that point than anything else. I eventually like was able to find the removal spell and just like wasn't close to losing as soon as I removed it. Um,
Gotcha. Gotcha.
but
Makes
like
sense.
I think like the threats progress as we go through the game. So like the like the scariest card in the early game is Grist, followed by Reclaimer. But
Mm-hmm.
then like the later we get, the better something like the Fiend Artisan gets in relation to Shepherd. Whereas like Shepherd, if you top deck it on nothing, it's fine, but it's not going to be that great. Whereas if you top deck Fiend Artisan or Grit, Fiend Artisan specifically on nothing,
Mm-hmm.
it's going to be quite good, and I will have to like reconfigure my game plan around it.
Makes sense. Makes sense. It's because it's hard to kill, especially in the later game, right? Early game you can bolt it or whatever, but later game I guess it's hard to
Right.
kill and just like it means that as long as I have creatures, I can just like continue to nuke your yard or develop board with Gris, right?
Yeah, that was the worry with that one.
Okay, I guess. Is there anything else? I know we basically so I think you hinted at it, but Allosaur Shepherd, you feel like because of the you said the texture of your hand, right? So it's probably high variance. Is that accurate to say?
Yeah, it like either it's like, well, this card does nothing on this board state, or I have to draw a bolt to deal with this, and there's no other card that would be that bad. Because like there was a game where I had like 6 cards in my hand, but 2 of them were forcible and 2 of them were days,
Right.
and like I just like it looked really stupid. But to you, it looks like terrifying, but I couldn't cast any of them, and so like it was a very funny texture.
That makes sense. I did mention too. I think one of the games where like I was like, man, he has like 6 cards in hand. I'm like a little bit afraid, right? Like what do you have? I thought you had maybe like the all removal or fury hand into a Murktide. Like that's what crossed my mind. But that makes a lot of sense because your counter magic was like stranded specifically in that board state.
Yeah.
Speaking of high variance, in your opinion, do you think Plague Engineer is worth it or not?
I think you probably shouldn't, because endurance is like fulfills a similar role
Mm-hmm.
in the like good against humans and has no tax against Murktide.
Mm-hmm.
And so you already have 4 endurance, which are significantly better in my mind than Plague Engineer. So it's probably just not needed.
Yeah, I kind of lean towards that too, where I feel like the guy's blessing, by virtue of being a green creature, sorry, not green creature, green card, that cycles. I think that is almost better than engineer. And the besides cycling, actually the pseudo nuking of the graveyard is like pretty relevant too,
Yeah, it certainly can be.
even though they can
There's
cover
not a
up.
card I was like thinking that you would board in, and so I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't really ever playing around it. So
No, no,
I
no,
would
no.
have to have like more games where I was actually playing against specifically Gaia's Blessing in order to say confidently how that would affect my gameplay. If that makes sense.
No, it does, it does, and nor should you be playing around it because it's like a one
Yeah.
of anyways. That's like very board specific. Like I really prefer not to see that card in my opening hand, but it's kind of like if I have to, I have to. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Uh, I guess the last question is Vendetta. This is like new tech. When I played against John Ryan, I didn't have it, and the reason was because I had Death Mark at the time, and Jax recommended to me as a straight upgrade over Death Mark, and I think it is because I think compared to Dismember, you're gonna lose less life most of the time, and besides that, it also, unlike Dismember, actually handles a big Dungeoneer. So I've been loving the Vendetta. What are your thoughts on like those two slots versus like any number of I guess black removal that could also be in those two slots?
Vendetta seems quite good. It's like a way of actually killing Murktide, which is not the easiest thing to do out of a green deck.
Mm-hmm.
And you do need a sufficient number of answers to it,
Mm-hmm.
because if you don't have enough answers to Murktide, it means I just aggressively force of will one of the few answers that you do have,
Right.
and
And
then you're just still in the same issue and are going to lose to the threat. But if you have like a sufficient barrier of removal spells,
mhm.
it's a lot harder for me to like decide to fight on that axis than if you're just on like four the four snuff outs.
Yeah, yeah, no, that makes sense. Like otherwise, the four stuff outs are really stressed in the matchup.
Yeah, they're very stressed, and I just will like hold force for one of them.
Right. And especially sometimes your hands will have like multiple creatures, so you'll just allow the first snuff out to resolve too, right? Like that totally makes sense.
Yeah, I don't think I ever countered a snuff out or was like remotely close to countering. I think there was like one single boar state where I contemplated countering it.
Gotcha.
But like I think it's pretty hard to counter it when you have vendetta and snuff outs
Right, right. Because you're
and
just going down a card, right?
endurances. Yeah.
Or going down tempo, I guess. Somebody brought up this analogy, and I guess I kind of agree with it, which is pretty funny. Somebody compared it to a fatal push with the emergency kill Murktide mode.
That is similar to what it is, yeah. But yeah.
Okay. I guess I don't have any questions left. I'm glad you did this with me, and then we can discuss. Afterwards, like the. I guess the difference was $40, right? Because three to
Yeah, yeah,
one.
yeah, yeah. Just email me
Right.
or
Did you want to
Discord.
promote anything while I have you here on stream? I know I put your Twitch already, but and your Twitter account. Anything else you want to promote, like while I have you?
No, that's really all I'm doing these days. Maybe I'll do something else in the future, but I don't really enjoy writing that much. Normally, I just will write out a couple thoughts in a tweet,
Mm-hmm.
but I find most of that on Twitter if I start to decide to
Sounds
do that.
good. Sounds good. And then anytime you want to run it back, I am more than happy to do this again with you, even if for fun or for whatever. For those who don't
Yeah,
know, Adam was actually very accommodating in terms of like my schedule. I know like our schedule actually didn't line up very well. We actually talked about this the same time
yeah,
I tweeted out with John Ryan for the first time I did a money match. But I'd like to thank personally Adam for his flexibility. And with that
yeah.
said,
My schedule just kind of sucks because I work at like what would be like would work until like 11 p.m. my time, which is
mhm.
like 7 p.m. your time. But like I don't or 8 p.m. your time. But I don't want to like I don't want to play Magic after I get off of like a 6 hour shift serving. Like I want to like crash,
Yeah, yeah, no,
drink a
I
beer.
feel that. Like,
Yeah,
I totally understand the value of just taking it easy and just like it's called life EV, right? Like that most people joke about.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
All right, I'll go ahead and
Exactly.
do you have anybody you would like me to raid?
Uh let's see if I have any.
I'll defer to
I
you.
don't have I don't have any friends that are streaming right now.
Okay, so I'll guess I'll raid Caleb. He's streaming Vintage Cube. This is the last day, so let's do that. And then I would like to thank you again for coming on here. Definitely had a lot of fun. I think we both probably learned a little bit about this matchup. I know, like I said, this like I think as you hinted at, this matchup is not too common. Most people are on the traditional combo build. Hopefully you had a lot of fun doing this as well.
Yeah, it was a good time.
Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and raid, and then we'll talk a little bit offline. And also thank everybody. Actually, here are my socials. Who are curious. For anybody who wants to check out my stuff, here are my like Patreon, YouTube, Twitter, Discord, uh, and thank you for hanging out. And then I'll raid Caleb now.